You're listening to the Real Estate Radio Network with local expert Craig Barton. Now, here's Craig.
So now that everybody's thoroughly depressed about dying this morning, no, it's just part of life.
It's the end of life. Very sorry that I'm so obvious.
Well, it is. I tell you what, it's coming.
It happens.
Whether you like it or not. I gave you the story earlier real quick about my folks, and my dad had been, quote unquote, he had been ill with cancer for 8+ years, almost made it 9 years. And I tell you what, we knew that it was nearing the end. We were able to plan to a certain degree with him, but with my mom, she was 70 years old in phenomenal health. The last time I saw her was was on the treadmill at GB3, and it's the most amazing memory that I have of my mom because she was smiling and she was happy, she was in her element, and she was working out, which she loved to do. She did it 5 or 6 days a week, but we weren't prepared for Mom. We totally anticipated that Mom was I thought Mom would far outlive me, to be quite honest. But it didn't happen. And that's, I think, she had an aneurysm, unfortunately. And that's, for me, a perfect example where that you're told you better start planning, because if you don't and you have stuff, even if you don't have stuff, again, as you mentioned, there's some very basic documents that you need to have in place.
And Craig, it's so much easier to plan and do these documents when you don't have that life-threatening event right there in front of you. It could be because, of course, when you get to that point in time where you're really having to grasp the fact that the end is coming, then it just becomes much more difficult, to really put those thoughts into writing. When you're young and you're carefree and you're not worrying about it, it's just easier, and it's
well, it also saves a huge hassle for the heirs and the children, obviously.
And Susan brought up an extremely important point that I wanted to touch on before we get through the 10 questions that you have to ask yourself if you want to preserve your financial legacy. And that is that the reason why you don't prepare today isn't because, I don't know what it's going to look like down the road. I don't know what the future is going to look like. If there's some uncertainty as far as my children are concerned, or they're all minors right at the moment, I'm not really sure what it's going to look like. It's important that you take care of it today, as if you had to make that decision today, because down the road you can change it. You can change how your estate looks. You can change, quote unquote, the plan, because your needs might change as well.
That's right, Craig, and that's what I tell people. Make a decision now based on what you want today, because you could always change it later. And I have many clients that come in every 6 months or so, and they make changes to their estate plan depending on whether or not one of their kids has made them mad that week.
Yeah. Wow. There you go, Tim. That one's for you, buddy. So the 10 questions that you have to ask yourself if you want to preserve, and these are really, they're going to strike a chord. You did a phenomenal job, Susan. If you want to preserve your financial legacy, number one, do you have a power of attorney for financial decisions in the event that you become incapacitated?
Craig, everybody should have this document, and this hit home for me a couple of years ago. My brother-in-law, at the age of 55, had a massive brain hemorrhage. He has been healthy in every respect, a mail carrier, and it was sudden, it was unexpected. This is my sister's husband, and I hadn't done any documents for him. It was just, you're young, you don't think you need them.
Sure.
He ended up in a comatose state for well over a month, and currently still trying to come back to himself. And she didn't have a health care power of attorney. And there's things you have to deal with. You have to deal with insurance issues, company retirement, benefit issues, things that have to be signed. You may have to rearrange assets to get somebody on Medi-Cal if they're in skilled nursing home care. So if you don't have that document, you could be putting a tremendous strain on your family.
Because if you can't make those decisions for a loved one who's going to.
Well, you have to go into court and be appointed as a conservator over that person's estate. Again, it's a court process. It's going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars.
Exactly my point.
Right.
And do you have a medical power of attorney with a HIPAA release?
Right, and we talked about that already. You need that to get billing information, and you also want to have a person appointed so you don't end up in one of those situations like the Terry Schiavo situation a number of years ago,
Yes.
where you had two family members arguing over whether or not to keep her on life support.
Number 3, do you want California law to decide how your assets will be distributed?
And that's true. If you don't put it in writing, you don't have some type of a will, the law is going to dictate how it goes, which may not be what you want.
Really?
I was going to get a little dig in and say that, well, Gov Brown was going to get his piece, but never mind. I won't say that. I'll just keep that inside, I think. Number 4, will your children all agree? I have seen, I can't tell you how many instances, will your children all agree on the division of personal property and other assets after you're gone? No.
No, that's right.
Absolutely
they won't.
not.
Unless they just don't care about what it is you have.
One won't care, the other one will and won't say anything, and the other one will care and raise holy heck, but they weren't appointed or...
And I've seen it divide families. So,
I'm sure.
Yeah, it's important to put that down in writing.
Number 5, have you made provisions for minor children if you aren't around to care for them? That was a big one with my wife and I.
By law, if you don't have some type of a trust for children, they're entitled to inherit from you at age 18. And to me, that's a very scary thought.
Oh,
So.
yeah. Wow. I mean, just kidding.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
So it's very simple to write trust provisions either in a will or a trust to have money managed for your children until they reach age 25, 30, whatever you want to designate, and have somebody in charge of their money.
That includes distribution of the proceeds from a life insurance policy as well.
And also includes nomination of a guardian for the person so you have some say in where they might live.
Are your adult children financially responsible to receive an inheritance? I think we just addressed that one. And do you want your estate to bear the expenses of probate? We talked about that earlier. It can be expensive.
Very expensive.
If you own real estate, do you have a trust?
You should. Everyone should, no matter what the value of the estate. Even if it's a small value property, what's called a summary procedure can cost more than a living trust.
Wow. Exactly. So run up the cost if you want. Just don't do anything.
Right.
If you have a trust, do you know what it does?
And that may be a topic for another program.
Absolutely. I think it is. I really do. I think it is. And number 10, if you have a trust, has it been properly funded? Again, another great topic. Mm-hmm. Would you come back and talk to us about trusts?
I'd love to.
Absolutely. Yay. Thanks so much. Susan Pascuzzi from Pascuzzi-Pascuzzi and Stoker here in the studio. Again, if you'd like to sit down with Susan, and you have some basic questions about how does my estate plan look, give Susan a call. Area code 559-227-1100. Again, 559-227-1100.